People who are poor and without parents are out of the question.
After making that declaration, the CEO forcefully splashed the water from his glass onto my sister. My sister, usually mild-mannered, stared at the CEO with an unexpectedly icy gaze and said with a steady voice,
Understood. In that case, please consider $200 million deal null and void.
What?
"My name is John Strong. I work in sales at a real estate company. I'm in my 40s, and I've been so focused on my work that I've remained single up to this point. People around me often suggest I should marry, but the concepts of marriage and family somehow don't resonate with me. Perhaps it's because of the environment I grew up in. Since losing my parents in an accident as a child, I have lived with just my sister, Alice. She scrimped and saved in various ways to raise me. To me, my sister has been more like a parent, really. I remember her working multiple part-time jobs as if it were yesterday, always busy. My hard-working sister is someone I'm truly proud of. The thing is, there's a place I'd like you to come with on the Sunday after next." Recently, a CEO of a client company mentioned through a sales rep that he wanted to introduce me to his friend's daughter. It's basically a setup, a blind date, and they're looking for someone serious and with determination. I'm not in a hurry to get married, but it seems the other party is quite enthusiastic. I was asked by the sales rep, and since the introduction was made by a CEO we do business with, I agreed to go ahead and arrange the meeting as suggested.
That's fantastic. Is the lady the daughter of a CEO? Marrying into that kind of family, you'd be set.
So, how does your schedule look like that day? I won't force you, but I'd like you to come if you can. If they're bringing a parent, it only makes sense for my sister, who's my only family, to be there too.
Sure, I can make it. It's your big day after all. I'd better book a hair appointment right away.
My sister was as excited as if it were her own affair, getting ready with such eagerness. Just seeing her like this made me feel it was worth agreeing to this setup. The day of the meeting finally arrived. It was just me and my sister on our side. On their side, it was Emily Carter and her father.
It's truly a pleasure to introduce a fine and earnest young man like you, John.
While we were nervous, the CEO was the only one chatting away with ease. I guess speaking in public comes naturally with his job. And if you were to marry my daughter, you'd be set for life, you know. After all, our company is currently negotiating a huge deal. Just between us, it's a transaction worth $300 million. $300 million. Watching the CEO boast in front of us, his daughter Emily looked embarrassed and gently scolded him with a smile.
Hey, Dad, why don't we listen to what John has to say instead?
Oh, my apologies. Got carried away there.
Emily's intervention was a relief to me. Thinking about the CEO becoming my father-in-law if I married her gave me pause about the future. The CEO cleared his throat and turned to us.
By the way, I see your sister is here with you today. What about your parents?
Yes, my parents passed away when I was young. To the CEO's question, I explained our situation. As I continued, I could see the CEO's expression turning grimmer.
What, is that so? Then John, you mean to tell me your only family is your sister?
Yes, My sister worked multiple part-time jobs to raise me. I owe it to her for acting as a parent and enabling me to pursue college and work for this company. Reflecting on my life, I couldn't help but feel deeply indebted to my sister once more. I've never seen my sister just lounging around. In my memories, she's always been a whirlwind of activity, juggling household chores and work. But as I was lost in these farts, an irritated voice broke through. It was the CEO's.
What? Part-time jobs? I can entertain the idea of a match with someone who leads such a poor life and only has a sister for family.
The friendly facade he had maintained up until now vanished, and he looked at us with disdain. With furrowed brows, he spat out his words at us.
To think you had the audacity to assume you could marry Emily, the CEO's daughter. To boldly go through with a blind date, that's the problem with poor folks. They are shamelessly presumptuous. Someone without parents and poor to boot is completely out of the question.
After his cutting remark, the CEO flung the water from the glass on the table towards my sister.
Hey, Dad, what are you doing?
What's the meaning of this? Emily looked pale as she stared at her father, appalled by his atrocious behavior. I was beyond furious and leaned in to retort. But at that moment, my sister, who had remained silent and still, stopped me. Normally mild-mannered, my sister now fixed the CEO with a gaze so cold it was startling. Beside her, I could feel the intensity of her anger radiating in waves. Despite her hair getting wet and droplets falling from it, my sister spoke up with a dignified voice.
Understood. Then please consider the $200 million deal as null and void.
What?
The CEO let out a sound involuntarily, as if he couldn't help himself. We were just as confused as he was. Everyone except for my sister was frozen in place, unsure of what was happening. What on earth was my sister talking about? Unable to comprehend, I just stared at her stern profile.
Null and void. Who do you think you are?
The CEO sneered mockingly, glaring at my sister. But my sister didn't show any sign of flinching and responded smoothly.
Since you've deemed our proposal as out of the question, I'm simply saying we should consider the deal null and void too.
At a glance, my sister maintained a very calm demeanor, but to me, who has been with her as family for so long, it was clear. She was truly furious deep down.
What are you on about? You think you can talk back to me? Even calling it sour grapes would be ridiculous. Our family business, Davis Manufacturing, is in talks with the famed East Capital Tech Innovations. What possible connection could you, a nobody, have with them?
I hate to side with this CEO, but just this once, I agree. What kind of relationship could possibly exist between the CEO's business negotiations and my sister? But my worries aside, my sister coolly dropped the bombshell.
I happen to be a major shareholder in East Capital Tech Innovations.
Don't give me that nonsense. Even as a joke, it's not funny.
The boss turned his face away in displeasure. I too found it hard to believe what my sister had said on the spur of the moment. The inheritance left by our parents was meager, and recalling the simple life my sister and I had lived, it seemed impossible that she could be wealthy enough to hold a large amount of stock in a renowned company. My sister worked multiple part-time jobs from dawn to dusk just to put me through college. Growing up, I saw her constantly being called away at a moment's notice, so the idea that she had the means to invest in stocks seemed far-fetched. The most luxurious thing we could afford was buying a cake for Christmas, which was our modest celebration. Yet, my sisters stood there, unfazed by our gazes, confidently owning the space.
If you find it curious, please go ahead and verify it. My name is Jane Strong. It's listed on the homepage of East City Tech Innovation.
With my sister's unwavering look upon him, the CEO begrudgingly took out his smartphone. Then, in the next instant,
No way, that's ludicrous.
it appears that my sister's name was actually listed there. When I checked myself, there it was, Jane Strawn. My sister's name was clearly written as a key shareholder of East City Tech Innovation.
Unbelievable. How on earth could such a pauper become a shareholder? What sort of error could allow that?
The CEO, while holding his head and moaning, scoured the home page from end to end, as if praying he was mistaken. Then, with a grimace like he'd bitten into a sour grape, he eked out his voice.
Even if Jane Strong really is a major shareholder, don't get too cocky, you pauper.
The CEO, breathing heavily through his nose, gave my sister a fierce look. So what about a mere $200 million? For my company's size, $200 million is chump change. I couldn't believe these were the same lips that, moments ago, were bragging so much about a $200 million deal. I was utterly astounded. Does this person have any other criteria for making decisions, or is it just money? Maybe it takes such an obsession with cash to build such a massive corporation in just one generation, but I can't help feeling that's not the right way to judge everything.
Go ahead, try it. But don't think for a second that you can bring down my company with that. We've got plenty of other big players we deal with.
Is that so?
In stark contrast to the CEO, who was insistent to the point of spitting, my sister simply replied coolly with a single sentence. Realizing his provocation had fallen flat, the CEO's face twisted for a moment.
Listen, I'm dead serious here. Don't come crying and apologizing later because I won't accept it. Wait a second, this whole story is nonsense.
The CEO suddenly slapped his knee as if he had an epiphany. Then he began to smirk and laugh to himself.
Man, I almost let my guard down. To think I almost got fooled by someone like you. That was a close call.
The CEO, laughing uproariously by himself, looked at my sister.
You assert yourself with such confidence that I almost believed you. The major shareholder listed here isn't you. It's someone with the same name, isn't it? Nonetheless, you did a good job finding that person.
What the CEO meant to say, it seems, is that the Jane Strong listed as a major shareholder on the East Tech Innovations website is just another person with the same name as my sister. But could there really be such a convenient coincidence?
If you don't want to believe it, that's your prerogative.
My sister replied indifferently as she dried her wet hair and clothes with a towel borrowed from the store. However, the CEO, confident in his opinion, began to argue back vigorously.
There's no way a poor kid without parents could work part-time and become a major shareholder, even if the name's the same. You probably don't even know what kind of company East Tech Innovations is, do you? I happen to be acquainted with the chairman over there.
The CEO, now smug, bragged with a hearty laugh, unasked.
Dad, that's enough.
Emily tried to interject. but the CEO berated my sister even more.
How can I stay silent when we're being ridiculed like this? You have a right to be angry too, Emily. We were almost fooled into marrying into a poor family like theirs.
Stop it, Dad.
If we get tied to these poor folks, we'll be the laughing stock. It would have been a huge embarrassment.
Hearing that, I couldn't hold back any longer. I didn't care if they talked about me, but I couldn't stand them belittling my sister who raised me like a parent. How can you say such things?
I almost got tricked by you too.
As I raised my voice, it seemed the CEO had shifted his target to me.
When my buddy introduced you, I was expecting a hotshot real estate salesman from a major company. But to think you're just a poor orphan, and your only remaining sister works part-time, which isn't even worth mentioning.
The CEO, while looking me in the eye, was dripping with sarcasm as he kept on attacking me. It was true I got into a top real estate firm due to my own efforts, but a huge part of that was thanks to my sister's support. She lived frugally every single day to get me through college, even had times when she wouldn't buy more clothes than the bare minimum needed for decency.
What kind of underhanded tricks did you use to get into a famous company? Did you forge your college on your resume, or write some lies? Considering you're the brother of a poor person who pretends to be a shareholder, nothing would surprise me.
Smirking, the CEO alternately looked at me and my sister, mocking us. I didn't want to breathe the same air as this disrespectful man any longer. Not amused by my silence, he turned his gaze back to my sister.
What's the matter, poor girl? Come on, no comeback. Struck silent by the truth, are you? You claim to be a shareholder, don't you? If you have any other proof, now's the time to show it.
The CEO was laughing his head off, seemingly having the time of his life, but my sister wasn't fazed. After neatly folding the towel she had finished with, she calmly opened her mouth.
If you need evidence that much.
She murmured softly and then began to make a phone call.
Who are you calling? Some uncle from the family coming to your rescue.
It was as if the CEO's words fell on deaf ears, or she was choosing to ignore them. My sister quietly spoke to the person on the other end of the line.
Is now a good time? Yes, the location is.
It seemed she was arranging for someone to come here.
This should be good. I wonder who could be gracing us with their presence.
The CEO kept pestering my sister in a snide manner, but she remained unfazed with a calm expression.
Maybe some uncle will come by with local sweets as a greeting. I'm not interested in mass-produced, cheap treats, though.
Well, we'll see. You just wait and see.
After that, my sister clammed up completely, responding with nothing more than "well, or is that so?" No matter how much the CEO tried to engage her. Eventually, it seemed he lost his enthusiasm and fell silent, leading to an awkward silence that lingered for a while. What on earth was my sister planning, and whom had she called? I just waited impatiently for time to pass. About 30 minutes later, a man walked into the room.
Apologies for the wait.
Sorry for the sudden call.
This is Carter from Carter Manufacturing.
The man, who looked to be in his 70s, was dressed in what seemed to be a very expensive suit. Of course, he wasn't a relative of mine, nor did I recognize him. He hugged my sister exaggeratedly, almost too zealously. I was wondering about their relationship when the CEO raised his voice irritably.
Hey you! Yes, you. Who do you think you are, walking in here all of a sudden?
I am.
As the man was about to reply, my sister smoothly raised her hand.
Allow me to introduce him. This gentleman is a colleague from my workplace.
I thought as much. Give it a rest, will you? I have no interest in meeting some poor person's acquaintance.
The CEO frowned displeasingly and waved his hand dismissively, as if shooing away a stray dog. Such behavior was excessively rude, even to someone he was meeting for the first time. To this, my sister tilted her head in faint surprise and said,
Oh, you really don't know him?
There's no way I would know such a person from the Pua crowd. Are you looking for a handout? Go back to the countryside and work the fields. Even that fancy suit looks pitiful on you. Wouldn't you be better suited in rubber boots, working the land?
The CEO spat out the words with irritation, but my sister just smiled sweetly and retorted,
That's strange. You said earlier that you knew him.
What? I never said any such thing.
But this gentleman here is Carter, the chairman of Eastern Tech Innovations, a company I've been fortunate to work with.
Hell, what the, huh?
The CEO stood with his mouth agape. I also couldn't believe what was happening right in front of me. The man referred to as the chairman gave a pleasant smile and handed out his business card.
Nice to meet you. Please keep me in mind.
Printed on the card was indeed the title of chairman of Eastern Tech Innovations.
You said you were acquainted with the chairman of Eastern Tech Innovations, didn't you?
Well, the thing is,
Despite his earlier bragging about knowing him, it seemed like it was the CEO's first time meeting the chairman of Eastern Tech Innovations. But ignoring the CEO, my sister and the chairman were chatting away like old friends.
I'm always so grateful for your help.
Not at all. It's me who should be thankful. Strong.
Oh no, I'm just part-time at best.
Don't say that. You serve as a consultant, don't you?
Well, I do work reduced hours, so it's kind of like being part-time, isn't it?
My sister said, laughing. I had no clue, but it turns out my sister had been contracted as a consultant with Eastern Tech Innovations. The role of a consultant is to listen to the various concerns that the CEO of the company has, identify challenges in management and operations, and come up with solutions. Especially my sister, who has been contracted with Eastern Tech Innovations for quite some time, now participates in management meetings and offers advice on running the business. She never talked about her work, so I had absolutely no idea. I just knew she was working part-time, so I assumed she was helping out with clerical work or something. To think she was actually consulting for Eastern Tech Innovations, that would explain why she's a major shareholder.
This is Carter from Carter Manufacturing.
My sister introduced, and the chairman silently nodded. Then, with a sharp look in his eyes, which was a stark contrast to the jovial conversation he had with my sister earlier, he told the CEO in a stern voice,
For a while now, you've been calling people poor and throwing around insults.
no, that was, a bit of a misunderstanding, the CEO stammered.
The CEO was waving his hands frantically trying to explain himself, but the chairman glared at him even more intensely.
Our company does not tolerate such attitudes. It's unacceptable, not just within our walls, but also when dealing with our partners.
No, I deeply apologize. I had no idea you were the chairman. Had I known, I would never have said such things. I was completely fooled.
At the CEO's excuses, the chairman let out a heavy sigh.
It seems you still don't understand that it's wrong to change your attitude depending on who you're talking to. Anyway, from now on, our company will no longer do business with you.
What? That's $200 million in business.
As the chairman made his position clear, the CEO collapsed onto the floor, holding his head in despair.
I'm sorry for today's trouble.
Said Emily, who had been quietly observing until now. It was supposed to be a matchmaking meeting between Emily and me, and I felt sorry that it had turned into such a commotion. I'm the one who should apologize. It was a pleasure to meet you, despite the circumstances. As I lowered my head, my sister and the chairman looked sincerely apologetic. In the midst of our mutual apologies, the CEO suddenly seemed to have an idea and blurted out with inappropriate cheerfulness.
Hey, that's it. Right, John, my daughter is quite the beauty, isn't she? How about we call it even? I'll give my blessing to your marriage in exchange for closing the deal.
As he said this, the CEO turned towards my sister with a smile. The CEO's appalling behavior, treating his daughter as nothing more than a bargaining tool, sparked a different kind of anger in me. Hey, that's just not right, I blurted out, stepping up to the CEO, but surprisingly, it was Emily who held me back.
I would really like to get to know John and Jane better. Could you tell me more about both of you?
While I'm touched by your feelings, Emily.
Emily, good for you. That's it then, the marriage is decided.
The CEO was all smiles, slapping Emily on the back with delight. If Emily and I were to marry, the nearly lost deal would be signed and the company would be back on track. Despite Emily being a truly remarkable woman, I simply cannot tolerate her father's, the CEO's, conduct. As I grappled with these conflicting emotions, Emily chimed in.
No, I do want to go out with John, but I'm severing ties with my father after today.
What in the world are you saying, young lady?
So, what I'm saying is I no longer need a father who takes pleasure in looking down on others. I'm cutting ties, so the company's affairs have nothing to do with me.
Emily stated matter-of-factly before turning back to John and his sister. Emily's clear eyes seemed to pierce straight through my heart.
John, Jane, if you're okay with someone like me, I'd like to start dating John with marriage in mind.
Absolutely thrilled.
You've found a good match, haven't you?
My sister said, beaming as she patted John on the shoulder.
That's wonderful news. Please allow me to offer my congratulations as well.
The chairman, who had been listening beside her, also beamed at us with a full-faced smile and blessing. In a room filled with matrimonial cheer, the CEO alone was dejected, sinking to his knees.
No, this can't be. I don't want to believe it.
With a deal worth $200 million turning to ashes and being disowned by his daughter, the CEO was sprawled on the floor, burnt out like embers. It's been a year since then. Emily and I officially started dating and got married. Thanks to my sister's help, it goes without saying that we had a grand wedding, blessed by many. While we are living a blissfully happy married life, the CEO faced some tough times. After losing a $200 million deal, the CEO's company had to sell off most of its departments to deal with massive debts. Although my sister and the chairman claim they did nothing, It seems that the fallout from East City Tech Innovations pulling out of the deal triggered a domino effect, with other business partners walking away. My sister believes that the CEO's inherently arrogant and dismissive nature is why this incident was taken so seriously. As a result, he was forced to resign, taking responsibility for the company's huge losses after being pushed out of various ventures. Now, someone else is working hard to turn the company around. Afterwards, the CEO tried to leverage his experience by becoming a consultant, but, as mentioned earlier, his reputation for being haughty and arrogant preceded him, and he didn't manage to attract any clients. So now, he's reluctantly working part-time as a janitor, and from what I hear, he's getting chewed out daily because he can't do the job right. As for me, I'm enjoying a smooth start to our married life. Having a wonderful partner like Emily has given me even more drive in my work. With a baby on the way next year, I want to cherish my family even more.
I'm a 55-year-old white-collar worker at a certain manufacturer. I've been with this company for 40 years now. I started working here right after finishing high school. Growing up, my family couldn't afford to send their kids to college. My dad passed away early, and I had 5 siblings. At 15, I was always angry at something. It felt like I was fighting the whole world. Those were my rebellious days. Has it really been 40 years since then? I sat on a bench outside the company, reminiscing about the past. Looking up at our towering corporate building, I felt the passing of time. Back in the day, our company was just a shabby local workshop with a bunch of misfits. Now, we've grown to be the most popular publicly traded company in the area. If it were up to today's hiring standards, a troublemaker like I wouldn't even make it past the application. Now, you need a degree, and not just any degree, but from a top university, to get hired. Our CEO back then was a real go-getter. He spent most of his time building strong connections with top figures in both domestic and international manufacturing. It paid off. As we started getting exclusive orders from world-renowned companies, we capitalized on the growth of the manufacturing industry in the US and expanded our company to what it is today. The CEO would often have me accompany him to business meetings. To be honest, I hated going on those trips because it cut into my free time. But thanks to that, I got to learn the skills of sales from scratch. Glancing at my watch, I saw it was 8:50 a.m. I should head to the office soon. New hires are assigned today. When I reached the office, labeled Sales Division 1, a new hire had already arrived. He was tall, with sharp features. His eyes showed intelligence but also seemed a bit condescending. One thing I could say for sure was that he was miles better than my unruly younger self.
Hi there, I'm David Thompson. I look forward to working with you all.
After his cheerful introduction, David went around greeting everyone. But there was something off about his greetings. Our company has 3 types of employees: those who are transferred nationally, local hires, and part-timers. The nationally transferred employees earn more and hold key positions. David, being a graduate of an Ivy League school, was of course in the first category. I noticed that David was overly polite to the nationally transferred employees, but with local hires and part-timers, he had a very dismissive attitude. I thought to myself, people who change their behavior based on someone's status will have a hard time in the future. I waited for David to come greet me, but he headed back to his desk instead. Manager, the division head, hurriedly asked David to greet me. With a smirk, David approached and said,
Sorry, I thought you were a janitor since you're sitting so far away. I'm David Thompson, looking forward to working with you.
I was taken aback, not because he mistook me for a janitor, but because of his idea that janitors don't deserve a greeting. I am genuinely concerned about his future as a professional. It seemed my initial impression was right. He definitely changes his attitude based on someone's perceived status, and if he deems someone to be below him, he becomes quite arrogant. Sure, nice to meet you. I'm Bob, by the way. And no, I'm not a janitor.
Oh, got it. So why are you sitting all the way over here?
Before I could answer, manager called out, David, let's go greet the director. He's leaving early today, so we need to hurry. That was my introduction to David. He's obviously smart, having graduated from an Ivy League school, but there are areas he seriously needs to work on. That was my first impression of David. David's attitude towards me hasn't changed. If anything, it seems to have gotten worse. It seems David heard somewhere that I only graduated from high school, and his condescending attitude towards me grew progressively worse. While he stops to greet manager, he just walks past me without even a nod. Every now and then, he'd comment with things like, Bob, can you use email? Or, do you know how to calculate fractions? He always does this when the manager isn't looking, whether it's cunning or just plain mischief. I wish he'd use that brain of his for something more productive instead of belittling a high school graduate like me. Also, it seemed like David looked down on sales jobs in general. Apparently, he originally wanted to work in business strategy. Once, at a company drinks event, after having a bit too much, he blurted out, anyone can do sales. You really don't need a brain for it. I really want to move to the business planning department soon. A couple of months after David joined, I heard he made a huge mistake in front of one of our top clients' executives. Apparently, he boasted about his educational background again. The client was so offended by David's attitude that they said they would cease doing business with us. David was called into the manager's office, and even our department head was troubled on how to handle the situation. Seeing David looking so down, I tried to console him. Looks like you messed up, David, but it's all right. We all make mistakes when we're new. Back in my days. But David interrupted me, shouting,
What would someone like you know? Don't tax so high and mighty. You're only a high school graduate. That executive was so clueless. That's why I can't stand people with low education.
This was definitely crossing the line. I understand he was overwhelmed after making his first big mistake, but there's a line you don't cross. We have many other high school graduates in our department, and some are conscious of their educational background. Just as I was about to lecture David, someone patted him on the shoulder. When David turned around, he saw a distinguished elderly gentleman with a white beard, leaning on a cane. His long white hair was neatly combed, and he wore an obviously expensive suit. However, his eyes were sharp, giving away an aura that he's not someone to be taken lightly. Even our knowledgeable David, who knows a lot about external politics, didn't seem to recognize that this gentleman was the previous CEO who built our company to its current stature. And for good reason, since he has been living a retired life and hasn't shown his face at the company for a while.
Who might you be?
You idiot! He's the chairman. Show some respect.
Our manager quickly intervened, grabbing David to back him off from the chairman.
You're David, right? I've heard the stories.
The chairman then turned to me, saying, It's been a while, Bob. What's with that odd way of talking? Even David was surprised to hear me using such casual language with the chairman.
I always imagined the chairman of a major listed company to sound like that.
You've got some nerve, considering you used to be almost like a gangster back in the day.
Hey, come on now. Nowadays, I'm known as a kind elderly gentleman. Let's not dig up the past, all right?
After we shared a good laugh, the chairman's expression turned serious. David, I heard you insulted Bob here because he's just a high school graduate. You upset the client's executive for the same reason too, right?
Yes.
David responded in a barely audible voice.
So, where do you see yourself in the future?
Business planning.
I see. That's the kind of ambition we expect from Ivy League graduate. But, you know.
The chairman reached out, pulling David closer by his tie, and whispered fiercely,
People like you, without any soul or real-world experience, are the same, no matter where they go. Our company is here today, thanks to Bob. The clients we've secured until we could be listed, every single one of them, were brought in by Bob. Even the client you upset today was a client Bob worked so hard to get. I actually wanted to make him the CEO, but his wife's health was in bad shape, so he's been fine with just being a regular employee.
He added,
A Harvard grad. Think you can do what Bob has done?
clearly intimidated by the sudden ferocious change in the gentleman's demeanor. David was petrified. I chuckled to myself, thinking the chairman hadn't really changed from his old ways.
Bob, I hate to ask, but could you come with me to apologize to our client?
Chairman, there's no need for that. David was even more surprised when he saw the entrance. To his astonishment, the executive he had angered earlier was standing there. Mike, long time no see. I could tell David was even more surprised to hear me speak informally to the executive. Over the course of time, and since we were the same age, we became close friends.
You look well, Bob. Haven't seen you in a while. Is your wife doing well?
Yes,
If you were the CEO, it would be easier for me to do business. But it's because you're so kind-hearted that I like you. Anyway,
Mike turned to David and said,
kid, I don't like you. But if you're willing to work under Bob and start from scratch, I might reconsider the business suspension. Chairman, Bob, is that okay with you?
Hearing these words, I had some farts and replied, I'm fine, but it seems David wants to go into strategic planning. He once said, anyone can do sales. I'm a pure salesman. I don't think there's much he can learn from a high school grad like me. I answered deliberately this way. Then Mike, fuming, shot back. Who achieves the sales targets set by strategic planning? Sales, right. It's sales that bring in the company's money. Don't belittle it if you don't know the hard work behind sales. As Mike was almost steaming with anger, the chairman and I desperately tried to calm him down. David, on the verge of tears, spoke up.
I will learn about sales from Bob.
From that day on, David began learning sales techniques from scratch under my guidance. Mike's company continued to do business with us, but with a warning that if David didn't change, they'd stop the business dealings. David worked hard, probably realizing the gravity of potentially losing a major client due to his attitude. I taught him everything I knew. You shouldn't look down on others, but you shouldn't be too humble either. Always be thoroughly prepared before making a sale, and never forget the fundamental principle that purchasing something is essentially an act of solving some kind of problem. David, once a know-it-all with his degree from an Ivy League equivalent, gradually changed. It was astonishing to see how a person can genuinely transform. He had a brilliant mind to start with. Once he was committed, he was quick to grasp concepts, and most importantly, he stopped judging people based on their education. He probably had some humbling experiences with tough older salesmen and reflected on his behavior. His sales performance soared, and he became known as the company's ace. 3 decades passed, and I'm now over 80. I remained a regular employee until the end of my career. While there were more challenging times than good, there were also many moments I cherish. The taste of beer shared with the team after securing a major deal, after pulling all-nighters to prepare, is unforgettable. It felt miraculous for a high school grad like me to work for a Fortune 500 company. And above all, the most fulfilling part of my career was mentoring David. David and I remained close, even after leaving our roles. At David's wedding, I had honor to give a speech instead of his direct boss. Every time he got a promotion, he would update me, and I treated him to steak. When he had a kid, he brought them over to my house. When he built his own home, he invited me. On my last day at the company, he cried openly. I quietly opened my desk drawer. Inside, there were business cards that David had given me over the years as mementos, though I always brushed it off saying, I don't need these. deep down, I was always happy. The most recent card from David read, Sales Division Head, David Thompson.
This takes me back to when I was in 5th grade. My sister, who's 3 years younger, had some kind of crazy idea to cut her own hair, and it turned into a total disaster. Trying to fix her over-trimmed bangs, she ended up taking scissors here and there until it was irreparable. The mess was so bad, even I, a boy, would have been embarrassed to be seen in public like that. My sister was so shocked by the horror she'd created that she shut herself off from the world. Seeing this, our mom, not willing to let things remain as they were, turned to a trustworthy hairstylist friend, asking her to help after her salon was closed for the day. Even though my sister brought this upon herself, I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. I was worried about her lack of responses to my attempts to cheer her up, so I decided to accompany her to the salon. Once at the salon, she was led to the styling chair where she hunched over and stiffened up. She must have been worried about whether her hair would ever look normal again. The hairstylist, who was around my mom's age, spoke gently to her, slowly easing her tension. As she started to cut and style my sister's hair, my sister began to respond to her comforting words, and by the time she had finished and checked her reflection, she was able to muster a small smile. Seeing this, I was moved by the power of a haircut to bring a smile to even the most upset person. I began to admire the hairstylist. With that aspiration, I graduated high school and enrolled in a beauty school, eventually landing a job in a salon. Despite my eagerness to cut and style my own clients' hair as soon as possible, I found myself stuck with chores every day. I put my heart into the work, seeing it as part of my learning, but the salon manager was harsh with newcomers and I felt like we didn't get along. He would often make snide remarks, and there were also some seniors who took this as an opportunity to make things difficult for me. Each time there was a mistake, I would be blamed, and although I felt like I was losing confidence, I didn't quit. I was allowed to practice cutting hair after the salon closed, which made me stick with it. One day while working, I noticed a woman peeking into the salon from outside. The manager and other staff noticed her as well, but they didn't seem to recognize her as a potential customer. She had long, unkempt hair and her eyes were hidden by her bangs. I thought about asking the manager if I should talk to her, but he flatly told me not to do anything unnecessary. After a while, the woman disappeared from the storefront. After closing, I was practicing my cuts when I noticed the same woman standing in front of the shop. It was getting dark, which made her seem a bit eerie. As I opened the door to let her know we were closed for the day, she timidly asked if she could get a haircut. It was after hours, and I wasn't authorized to take clients. I wanted to turn her down, but she explained that she had been too shy to ask during the day with other customers around and couldn't give up and had returned. Considering her as a practice model, I decided to accept her request to cut her hair. I was starting to lose confidence, but I had a feeling that if I could make this woman smile with my haircut, something might change. I tried to ease her tension by recalling how the hairstylist had calmed down my sister. She left the style up to me, so I suggested a daring short cut. She seemed surprised and hesitated a little, but she agreed, saying, "If you say so." Once the woman relaxed, she spent the entire time with a calm smile, surrendering herself to my haircut. We didn't exchange many words, but I felt an enjoyable unity with the customer, as if she was drawing out the best of my skills. Once the cut was over, the woman looked in the mirror and left the shop with a shyful face smile, bowing her head to me repeatedly. I was satisfied that I could bring out that smile, and I tidied up the shop before heading home. The next day, during work, the manager called me to the back room. Apparently, a senior employee had seen me cutting the woman's hair while passing by the shop the previous night. "Don't do whatever you want, do it again and you're fired," he warned. From that day, I wasn't allowed to assist with clients anymore and was relegated to doing chores only. Even practicing haircuts after closing was prohibited. The confrontations from the manager and the seniors became stronger than before, and I felt like they were pushing me to quit. Even I began to lose the sense of purpose of working at this shop, and, while carrying out the mundane tasks every day, I was considering leaving. As I walked into the shop with a heavy heart one day, the manager and staff were buzzing about something. It seemed a young female researcher featured on TV was being talked about for being excessively beautiful. One of the staff showed me a picture of the woman on his smartphone and came up to me saying, "You know her, right?" It was the senior who had told on me for cutting the woman's hair. When I responded, "Indeed, she's the woman I cut the other day," the room erupted. Especially the manager, who was so excited that he was almost dancing, smiled broadly at me. Apparently, the woman had briefly mentioned the hairstylist who cut her hair during an interview, and people were buzzing about which salon she had gone to. Seeing it as perfect publicity, the manager, changing his attitude completely, praised me for my work and asked if there was any way to get in touch with the woman. Baffled by his quick change, I could only give a vague reply, to which the manager cheerfully patted my shoulder, told me to do my best, and said I could practice cuts as much as I liked from now on. He also said that I might become the poster stylist for the shop, so I should start learning to assist and take charge of haircuts as soon as possible. After closing, while practicing cuts, I was contemplating my future. Despite the elated manager, the seniors were cold. I had been acknowledged, but it seemed like it would become harder to work at this shop. Even during practice, I couldn't focus due to these thoughts, and just as I was trying to switch my mood, the shop's door was knocked. There she was. I was surprised and went to open the door. The woman in a suit was so beautiful it was hard to recognize her. I was also happy that she had styled her hair just as I had advised. I've heard a lot about you," I blurted out in confusion. The woman chuckled and said, "I was worried because I hadn't seen you recently. I wanted to thank you again, so I arranged to pass by here at this time." When I explained what had happened since I cut her hair, the woman apologized repeatedly, feeling sorry for causing me trouble. "It's all right. Thanks to you, I got to do the customer haircuts I've always wanted to do. If I hadn't cut your hair that day, I might have given up on my dream." That was my honest feeling. I was stuck doing chores and dealing with sarcastic remarks every day, and I didn't know if I could muster up the strength to try again at another salon if I ran away from this. Hearing this, the woman seemed relieved and said, "I know this is my way of saying sorry, but could I please request a proper haircut as a customer next time?" The salon told me to do so, right? I quietly furrowed my eyebrows at her offer. I had no intention of contacting the woman in the first place, and I was planning to keep it a secret from the manager that she came to the shop today. "Well, that would help, but our shop will use you for publicity. You don't like to stand out too much, do you?" I knew from the little conversation we had while cutting her hair that day that she didn't want that. I aspired to be a hairstylist who was close to the customers and could draw out their smiles. I didn't cut the woman's hair to force her to do something against her will. Besides, I've received enough thanks already. You responded to my haircut with a big smile. As a hairstylist, we don't ask our customers for more than that. I thought I might be showing off a bit, but that was my true intention as a hairstylist, without any lies or deceit.
But I still want to help you.
The woman leaned in as she said this, looking into my eyes. I asked her, a bit confused, why she was going to such lengths.
Actually,
Apparently, the woman had known about me for a long time. She was encouraged by seeing me diligently practicing my haircuts whenever she passed by here after late nights of research. She even said that the reason hair research results started getting attention was thanks to me.
it kind of feels like I'm a stalker, which is creepy, isn't it?
The woman concluded with a hint of self-deprecation, but I was glad to know that someone had been watching my hard work in that way. That's not true at all. I'm very encouraged by your story. When I honestly said that, the woman smiled as if relieved.
That's good. Then, can I request a haircut again? I have an important research presentation coming up, and I'd like you to cut my hair for that.
Given what she said, there was no reason for me to refuse her kindness. In fact, knowing the manager, he might flip his hand again if he sees that I have no connection with the woman. I understand. We look forward to your visit. I decided to express my gratitude by bowing deeply to my first customer who requested me by name. The day of the woman's visit was my first time officially taking charge of a haircut. The manager, who wanted to maximize the promotional effect, seemed to want the woman to be my first customer for the sake of the story. Despite my own thoughts on the matter, that was also what I wanted, so I continued to practice cutting hair after closing time alongside the manager's assistant, in preparation for this day. As the woman's reservation time approached, not only the manager but also the other staff began to get a bit nervous. Of course, I was as well. But it wasn't anxiety, it was a sense of anticipation and excitement. The time had come, and a woman entered the salon. The sight of her took everyone's breath away, including the manager, who had been preparing to greet her. Other staff members unconsciously stopped what they were doing, and even the customers followed suit, all eyes on her. You could hear voices asking the attending staff who this beautiful woman was. Bathing in the gazes from all around the salon, I was worried if the woman might feel uncomfortable, so I hurriedly went over to guide her.
Nice to see you today.
But it seemed my worry was unnecessary, as the woman straightened up confidently and greeted me. The woman who had hesitated to enter the salon was no longer there. Seeing her filled with such confidence made me feel proud, and with my chest out, I guided her to the styling chair, saying, "Please, this way." When asked about her preferences, just like the last time, she answered, "I leave it to you," and let me take care of her while we chatted and proceeded with the cut. That day, our conversation flowed, and near the end of the cut, she confessed that up until now, she would just cut her hair herself whenever it started to get in the way. I had a hunch this was the case, but hearing her say it made me chuckle a bit. After confirming her hairstyle, she replied with the broadest smile, "As always, it's wonderful. I look forward to continuing this." The woman who responded with such a beaming smile left the salon with grace. A few years later, I finally realized my dream of opening my own salon. It was hectic to the point of making my head spin, but I was spending fulfilling days with many customers coming to ask for my cuts. I was blessed with a great team, and every day was busy but fun. Around that time, There were gradual changes in my personal life as well, and I found myself going out with her in between the busy schedule. Perhaps because she is known as a beautiful researcher, there are people who turn around when we walk on the street. Whether she knows or not how I feel nervous walking beside her, she has recently started to suddenly hook her arm into mine. Are you teasing me because I'm younger? When I ask sulkily as a way to hide my embarrassment, she looks at me as if offended and says, I'm older, so I'm in a hurry. Is this a bother to you? This woman, with a serious face, says such things and stares at me as if observing, which leaves me at a loss. No, I'm happy. When I give up and answer truthfully, she beams at me, the smile I love so much, and says, then, I'm glad. She rejoices like a child. Although I'm always being led by her, I've made up my mind to be the one to propose. On my days off, I become a different person. When I change my appearance, I can act as if I've adopted a completely different personality. By deliberately taking days to free myself from this not-so-great version of me, I've somehow managed to get through the workdays.
You really can't handle a job, can you?
That's what I was often told while hopping from one part-time job to another after dropping out of college. After being let go from a part-time job at Delhi at the age of 22, my parents pushed me into a driving school, and I managed to get my driver's license. Without a college degree, there are only so many places willing to hire me. Maybe they were worried about me becoming unemployed in the future, thinking I should at least have a basic driver's license. When I finally got my license, my parents told me I had to work to pay back the money it cost. It felt like unknowingly spending money on a supposedly free online game, being hit with a bill out of the blue. Maybe my parents feared I'd just laze around aimlessly as a temp worker and eventually lose all ambition. It's true, having a financial goal can motivate one to keep working. While I was working at a local bar and almost finished paying back my parents, an opportunity arose. A regular customer, who was the owner of a transportation company, approached me and offered me a full-time position. Mr. Smith, the company's CEO, was tolerant towards guys like me who had strayed from the conventional path in life. I was hired because of a chronic shortage of drivers, but I wonder if I'm truly cut out for this job. While handling various odd jobs, I underwent training as a driver. Being in a rural area, the company's dedicated parking lot, or truck yard, is vast. Mr. Smith told me it was a good place to practice, and whenever I found free time, I would hop onto one of the parked trucks. Even though it was a small truck that could be driven with a standard license, controlling a vehicle that weighs 2 tons was challenging. But Mr. Smith was always encouraging me, and my boss, Mr. Johnson, would find time to instruct me passionately. Gradually, I wanted to meet the expectations of them. At first, my colleague would sit in the passenger seat to help me get used to driving on public roads. Once they felt I was competent enough, I was tasked with deliveries on my own. I was thrilled, but also incredibly nervous. As anticipated, I made a series of mistakes, like taking the wrong route or misjudging the truck's width and grazing utility poles. Due to my shorter stature, I've been teased that it looks like a kid's driving a truck. I always make sure to greet everyone properly at work, but perhaps because of my insecurities about being a high school graduate and my appearance, I'm not good with social interactions. My colleagues seem to be favored by our clients, often invited to play in local baseball games or for drinks. I feel I can't communicate as effectively. Considering my driving skills and interpersonal abilities, I worry about whether if I'm suitable for this truck driving job every day. Yet, Mr. Smith and my bosses never gave up on me. They would tell me that even if I make mistakes, I should gain experience and learn. I've never been in a workplace with such supportive relationships before. While our salaries might be lower compared to bigger companies, they even allowed me to get a forklift operating license on the company's dime. I felt their genuine concern beyond the regular employer-employee relationship. For the first time in my life, I felt a real urge to work hard and someday be an asset to the company. Our company's biggest client was a local supermarket chain that had been expanding to multiple locations in the area. We were responsible for their product deliveries and seemed to have built a solid relationship over the years. However, they decided to introduce an online grocery service, and a bigger transportation company came into the picture, taking over our spot. That company is larger than ours and can provide more drivers, so they won the client over. It was deemed more convenient to have the same transport company handle both online deliveries and regular product shipments. Can't believe we got cut off like that. Even though we believed we had established trust, loyalty, and goodwill with this major client, they chose to move on. Mr. Smith was devastated. Losing such a significant client, who kept us busy daily, could push our company towards bankruptcy. I was primarily responsible for delivering to that supermarket's main branch. The route only required me to drive on the main roads, so even someone with driving skills like me found it hard to make mistakes. I often wondered if I had been better at communicating and if the manager had liked me more, maybe I wouldn't have lost the contract. A few weeks later, an advertisement about a new candy launch event at that supermarket came in the newspaper. Looking at the flamboyant advertisement made me feel bitter. The CEO, Mr. Smith, along with my colleagues who usually act as drivers for the supermarket, were out trying to get new clients. Not being fit for sales, I was left in the office, covering for a sick receptionist. My sense of self-loathing, feeling useless, made me even more frustrated. Then, a call came into the office. It was from the manager of that supermarket's main branch. They inquired if our company could secure a new product that hadn't been delivered due to an error by the transport company. The mid-sized transport company that took our client might be professional as a courier, but they didn't seem to know much about food logistics. Apparently, there was an ordering mistake due to poor coordination with their supplier. I quickly contacted Mr. Smith to report the situation. Following his instructions, my colleagues and I started contacting possible wholesalers to secure the product. What should I do in a situation like this? Checking the advertisement, I realized the event was about to start. I quickly changed and headed to the location on my scooter that I use for commuting. It was embarrassing when people laughed and pointed at my outfit as I passed by, but I had no time to care about that. When I arrived, the shelves designated for the event were still empty. Many families with children were shopping, and kids were flocking around the staff handing out balloons. It seemed many were eagerly awaiting the launch of the candy that came with toys from a popular cartoon, leading to a rush after seeing the advertisement. Voices of dissatisfaction were everywhere, and the situation was getting out of hand. I approached one of the staff distributing balloons and asked if I could perform to divert attention. Given the circumstances, the staff member gladly agreed. Dressed as a clown and wearing a mask, I began to juggle, attracting the children's attention. Yes, to always be prepared for any client outings, I had learned tricks like juggling. However, Being introverted, I have never had such opportunities. Feeling unfulfilled, I once participated in a street performers festival on a dare. That was about 2 years ago. The applause I received back then was unforgettable, and since then, I've been attending such events whenever I get the chance. Wanting to keep this a secret from my family, I stored my costumes and props in my locker at work. Seeing the children's joy, I showcased a few juggling tricks and then used balloon art to buy more time, believing that Mr. Smith and my colleagues would surely deliver the product. I spotted Mr. Smith in our company uniform carrying boxes, and I felt relieved from the bottom of my heart. Kids quickly lose interest and move on to the next thing. Once the products were on the shelves, they all rushed over and formed a line. Having served my purpose as the clown, I headed to the back to greet Mr. Smith and the store manager. As I approached them after removing my mask, I heard them discussing seriously and decided not to interrupt.
Thank you so much. Ever since we switched to that transport company, we've had so many delivery issues. Today made me realize once again that we're better off with your company. Can we contract with you again?
Hearing the manager's words, I saw a glimmer of hope. Mr. Smith seemed to feel the same, repeatedly shaking hands in gratitude. It looked like they would sign with our company again. Relieved that our company would avoid bankruptcy, I overheard,
Thank you very much.
His robust voice echoed in the back.
But please keep that guy off our account. He's so gloomy and talks so softly. And didn't he drop out of college?
My world went dark. It was a fact, so I can't blame them. No matter how much I try to change my attitude and work hard at my current job, this is how I'm viewed by the world.
Understood.
He hesitated for a moment but agreed. It is what it is. The store manager of the main branch is the son of the CEO who runs this supermarket chain. So, he also has the power to choose the transportation company. Aggravated the store manager, and losing a major client could lead to bankruptcy, as we learned from a previous incident. I couldn't expect him to defend me in this situation. I stood there, dumbfounded, for a while. Regaining my composure, I remembered how I was dressed and discreetly left the scene without being noticed. After looking around carefully, I climbed onto my scooter. I had regained enough composure not to want to shatter the dreams of children. Tears flew in the wind as I rode my scooter, the helmet partially covering my ridiculous clown costume. Fitting for my pitiful self, I parked in a nearby park's parking lot and called the office. It seems Mr. Smith had informed them because I could hear the voices of my colleagues rejoicing.
I have an urgent errand and am stepping out. Where the hell are you?
It appears Mr. Johnson had read the hurried note I left behind and asked, puzzled. With my messy face, I couldn't show myself to my coworkers, so I told them I wasn't feeling well and would leave early. To the joyful group, it seemed like a minor incident, and they didn't pry further. When I got home, I changed and went to bed. I realized once again that being a driver might not be the job for me. The next day, not wanting to cause any more trouble for Mr. Smith, who was always kind to me, I decided to quit and went to work with my resignation letter in hand. For some reason, there was a commotion at the company entrance. Not only Mr. Smith and my colleagues, but also the supermarket manager. And, strangely, someone wearing a jacket with the logo of a local cable TV channel. They seemed to be waiting for me, and I was surrounded.
Man, you've become quite the sensation.
Mr. Johnson said, excitedly patting my shoulder. He showed me his phone, and it appeared a customer had uploaded a video of my performance at the supermarket yesterday, and it went viral. The title read, Bored Kid's Savior. The clown who appeared like a hero, which made me feel slightly embarrassed. Sorry for causing trouble. I quickly apologized to the store manager.
No, the store's logo was in the shot too, so it was a great advertisement. Plus, you were keeping the place entertained before our product delivery, right?
Yes, right.
It seems I was wrong about you. Thank you very much.
I was relieved by the unexpected praise from him. Mr. Smith and my colleagues also praised me, and I was happy to have been of help to the company. But how did they find out it was me? I had been in a clown costume with a mask, and I hadn't even spoken to Mr. Smith in that outfit. The staff who handed out balloons didn't seem to react either, so it's hard to believe they recognized me by my voice alone.
We were inquiring about an interview after seeing the buzz on the video sharing platform. So, we asked the store manager if he knew the clown,
said someone who appeared to be from the cable TV crew. Apparently, after I had witnessed the tense conversation between Mr. Smith and the store manager in the storage area, there had been an interview by the cable TV crew. During the interview with the store manager, I happened to be caught on camera in my clown outfit. I had been so stunned by the near-firing incident that I hadn't noticed the TV crew filming. To an average viewer, it would have been a brief, almost unnoticed glimpse, but the shot of me in my goofy clown outfit without the mask had been broadcasted. After receiving a call from the TV crew, the store manager watched the recording and realized the clown was me. He then told Mr. Smith, "It was your employee who did that."
Thank you. If you hadn't entertained everyone before the product delivery, the lingering negative impression from the event's failure might have jeopardized our chances of renewal. You're a savior to our company.
The warm words from him brought tears to my eyes. At a later date, I was interviewed by cable TV as a street performer. After the broadcast, the TV station was apparently flooded with inquiries, including requests for show appearances and dispatches to events. The cable TV office agreed to manage me on the condition that I also double as the person inside the popular mascot, akin to a local mascot. In essence, it's like I became a contracted performer for them. Being short, playing the role of the person inside was perfect for me. Being a shy person, I find it easier to be myself when wearing a costume or a mask, and it seems I can make people smile that way.
As long as you have offers, give your current job your all. If the work runs out, you can always come back here.
He told me, reassuring me that there's always a place for me to return. Honestly, I feel more suited to this job than being a driver. Determined not to take his kind words for granted, I've resolved to hone my skills and aim for greater heights as a performer.
Mr. John, this just came in.
Reading the document handed to me by my secretary, Mary, my eyes widened in shock. Yes, it was a notice for an emergency shareholders meeting to discuss my dismissal. Noticing Mary's concerned gaze, I silently passed her the paper.
What? Are they firing the CEO?
Even the always composed Mary let out a gasp. She seemed to be in the dark as well. Anyhow, we'll find out at the shareholders meeting. I tried to stay calm, gripping my fist tightly. Usually, I preside over these meetings, but this time, it's being chaired by Mike, the coup. This fact made me uneasy. Mike and I were college buddies, and we started this company together. I've been leading the charge as the CEO while Mike, as the coup, has been my right-hand man, and together we've grown the company. However, in the past few years, Mike's overbearing actions and attempts to privatize the company became increasingly apparent, and I had been keeping an eye on him.
The reason for convening this emergency shareholders meeting is due to growing concerns regarding the managerial capabilities of our CEO, Mr. John Patterson.
Mike began his speech fluently. The main reason they cited for my removal as CEO was my diagnosis of prostate cancer last year. They claimed that during my hospitalization, I neglected my duties, failed to communicate, causing confusion and a significant blow to our employees, leading to a steep decline in the company's performance. Furthermore, there's a chance my cancer could recur, making it uncertain when the company might face such a crisis again. The consensus was that they needed to remove me from my company immediately and have a new CEO to turn things around. That's a preposterous accusation. I immediately retorted. During hospitalization, I was in touch with Mike almost daily. Mike had told me not to worry and take it easy, assuring me that everything at the company was fine. However, Mike coolly stated, "I never received any communication from Mr. John during his hospitalization. No matter how many times we reached out, we never got a response." I was stunned by his blatant lie. This sudden betrayal was bewildering. I thought of pulling up the email history, but now I remember. About a month ago, we were informed of a virus in the company's IT system. As I had ordered its repair, all the internal emails were deleted. Without a doubt, this was all part of Mike's plan.
Wait a minute. I exchanged emails with Mr. John daily, discussing work reports and consultations. All our exchanges are still on my phone.
Mary shouted out. The communication with Mike was through the internal email, but my exchanges with Mary were on company-owned cell phones, so they weren't deleted. But Mike had another reason up his sleeve. It was the possibility that my cancer might come back, and I'd need to be hospitalized. Prostate cancer has a high survival rate and can be cured completely. In fact, I'm totally recovered and have no other health issues. I explained my condition, but after the vote, it was decided I'd be removed as CEO. Looking around the board members, a few wouldn't meet my eyes and looked down.
Mary, I hope you'll support the new CEO from now on.
At Mike's words, Mary's eyes flared up.
I am Mr. John's secretary. If it means following you, I'd rather quit.
Following that, a few board members stood up, saying they'd follow me. I was deeply touched by their loyalty, but I couldn't let them lose their jobs over a fleeting emotion. After the shareholders' meeting, I desperately convinced them to stay with the company. The board members, looking both frustrated and guilty, decided to stay, thinking about their families. But Mary and my trusted team members, Jake and Ethan, were determined. They left the company, resigning on their own terms.
We'll be preparing for the day you start a new venture. When that time comes, please call us back.
Mary said, to which I nodded in agreement. I sold my downtown apartment and luxury car and began a frugal life in a small flat. While seeking funds to start a new venture, I also began working part-time at a nearby coffee shop. I thought I was too old and worried about being hired, but they valued my experience from college days when I worked at a cafe. That coffee shop was a gathering place for those thinking of starting a business or those struggling with their new ventures. In other words, it was a study group. In a quiet coffee shop, I could easily hear their passionate conversation even as I worked. It inspired me greatly, making me feel like I needed to step up my game. The morning group members changed from day to day, but one woman who frequently participated caught my attention. Her name was Kate, and she runs a free tutoring center targeting kids from low-income families.
I want to offer kids the kind of experience I had at the tutoring center I went to, letting them see the fun and excitement of learning.
The sparkle in her eyes as she spoke was quite memorable. However, it seemed her tutoring business was facing challenges. She relied on volunteer students as tutors, but sometimes they'd call in last minute with other commitments, leaving her in a bind. The cost of renting a space was high, and donations alone weren't covering the expenses. She had been using textbooks and workbooks donated by students and parents, but they were often outdated or had other issues. Each time I overheard such concerns, a growing desire built within me to help. Excuse me for approaching you out of the blue, but could you tell me more about your project? As the morning group session ended and attendees began to leave, I gathered my courage and approached Kate. She looked quite taken aback, but finally said, "All right," and took a seat again. After getting a deeper understanding of the challenges her tutoring center faced, I made a proposal. Why don't you hire me? I believe I can be of help. I'll work for free until things look up for the business. Kate looked at me in surprise, asking, "Really?" But perhaps she was desperate for any lifeline. She agreed to have me work with her. First, I suggested she turn her business into a nonprofit organization. This would provide tax benefits and make her eligible for grants and other financial aids. Not only that, but if all goes well, it's possible to partner with public agencies and businesses. Next, we changed the free lesson system for our students. Instead of attending for free, we introduced a give and take system. They help younger kids with their studies, or if they're not good at studying, they can teach other skills. Kids who don't have much time help with cleaning. This way, students not only receive but also give, gaining confidence. The classroom atmosphere feels better than before. The biggest change was transitioning teachers from volunteering to paid positions. Relying on volunteers can be tricky. Some teachers start with high motivation, but as time goes on, they start to slack off thinking they won't get paid anyway and end up taking breaks. At the end of the day, money talks. After starting to give salaries, teachers stopped canceling on short notice, and they became even more dedicated to their classes. We provide the latest textbooks and workbooks. Otherwise, we can't keep up with school curriculums, and it puts us at a disadvantage for entering university. I visited the City Hall multiple times, explaining the purpose of our tutoring center and requesting grants. It took a while to get the grant approval, but from there, our network expanded and we found supporting businesses. Many reviews caused our student numbers to skyrocket, and our efforts began attracting media attention. Kate was featured in TV and magazine interviews, and even online news highlighted her. As a result, the number of students wanting to join exploded. By this time, I was receiving a decent salary from Kate. There was a request to expand our classroom, but the two of us alone couldn't handle the operations. I was approached by Kate about hiring more staff, and I confidently responded, "If that's the case, I know some excellent people." Upon my invitation, Mary, Kyle, and Ethan quickly joined us.
We've been waiting for this moment. Please, let us help.
Their passionate words left Kate stunned.
Mike, just who are you?
Then I revealed my past for the first time. I once ran a tutoring center myself. It became successful and expanded nationwide, and I even started publishing textbooks and workbooks. However, I was betrayed by my co-partner, was removed as the CEO, and was forced out. Kate's center is nonprofit, so there's no risk of being targeted by the company I used to work for. Plus, with my experience, I believed I could help. Kate, still spurist, hesitantly asked,
The tutoring center you ran. It's the same one that provided the textbooks you gave us, right?
"Yes, that's right." Suddenly, Kate's eyes widened even further.
Oh my. I attended your center. You taught me the joy and fun of studying. I can't believe I've been working with the man who founded it.
She was blushing with excitement. I felt both embarrassed and pleased. Let's all work together to reach out to kids nationwide who can't afford tutoring. Mary took on tasks like scheduling, setting up appointments with the city and supporting companies, and handling the media. Thanks to the help, my workload decreased significantly, allowing me to focus on my primary tasks. Kyle went out to research areas with a high concentration of low-income families for potential new tutoring center location. Ethan visited the centers to support the teachers and also took on the responsibility of liaising with parents. This is how Kate's tutoring center steadily gained a reputation. Then, one day, we received a partnership offer from a particular company. Yes, it was my company that Mike had taken over. Only Kate was making media appearances, and I had asked to keep my name out of it, so Mike wasn't aware I was involved with this company. Mary looked up.
Mike, we're all set.
I nodded in acknowledgement. On the day of the meeting, looking up at the familiar building, I felt a rush of adrenaline. As I entered the lobby, murmurs rippled through the crowd.
Mr. John.
I smiled at the surprised receptionist and informed her of Kate's visit. She could have used my name, but she refrained and led the way.
Former Vice President Mike is waiting for you in the CEO's office.
I nodded slightly and stepped into the elevator. Reaching the top floor, the awaiting secretary stepped back in surprise.
Sophia, it's been a while.
When Mary, who used to be secretary pals with her, smiled at her, Sophia turned pale and led us to the CEO's office.
Mr. Mike, you have visitors.
Sophia didn't mention we were with her. It seems that even the secretary isn't on Mike's side.
Well, thank you for taking the time to.
Mike's cheerful expression froze as he saw me. That's a polite greeting. Thank you. His voice grew louder the moment he saw my face.
Why the hell are you here?
Kate stepped forward.
Mike has been working with us as a consultant. We came to decline your offer. We have no intention of letting you take over our company.
Mary backed her up.
We've already found out that while you mentioned a partnership, you intended to exploit our name and our status as a nonprofit to sweeten the deal for yourself.
Kyle and Ethan continued.
That's not all. Even after Mike was ousted, we kept in touch with the executives and staff and conducted our own investigation.
Mike, you embezzled funds intended for expanding the tutoring centers, used them to pay off gambling debts from casinos, and held a shareholders meeting out of fear of Mike finding out, didn't you?
Mike turned ghostly pale.
Gray, where do you have such evidence?
Responding to his question, Mary held up the evidence, and Mike fell to his knees. After that, the IRS initiated an audit, and in collaboration with the police, Mike was arrested for embezzlement. Naturally, the CEO was fired. Not just that, the board members who had taken money from Mike were also let go. Later, although it might seem too late after all the betrayal, could you please come back? Our company has no one but Mr. John to rely on. Former employees came to me, pleading. Among them were board members who said they would follow me. I had no intention of returning to that company. But Mary, Kyle, and Ethan strongly wanted me to come back. Kate also asked me, please support the Academy of My Memories. I really appreciate it. I returned as the CEO, and Mary rejoined me as my secretary. I asked Kyle and Ethan to liaise with Kate's company. We once again partnered with Kate's company and provided our published reference books and workbooks for free and shared our teaching know-how. We were afraid of complaints from the parents who are paying high tuition fees, but since we are not sending instructors and we have a completely different system, they actually welcomed us warmly.
I don't know how to thank you, John. I really appreciate it.
Kate thanked me, and I quickly bowed in gratitude. I should be thanking you for giving me another chance. Also, Mary, Kyle, Ethan, thank you for believing, waiting, and supporting me. Tears welled up in Mary's eyes.
We could wait for you like this because besides the severance pay, you paid us a year's salary. Thanks to that, we could investigate the company internally and prepare to return immediately when needed.
Kyle and Ethan nodded in agreement. I'm blessed to have such good subordinates.
John, I look forward to our continued partnership.
I responded to Kate with a smile. Same here, looking forward to it. Though we cater to different students, our shared passion is to convey the joy and fun of studying. We want to continue providing an education that expands future children's horizons and encourages them never to give up.